Welcome everyone to our October the 1st, 9 o'clock meeting. I see the mayor of Spring Lake just came in and you have some guests. Always good to see you folks, and God bless each of you. If you would stand at this time, I will do the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Lord, you are our comfort and strength in times of disaster and crisis. Surround us this day, Lord, with your grace and peace, because we had storms and floods and troubled times in our lives. By your Spirit, lift up those who have fallen. Sustain those who work to rescue or rebuild, and fill us with the hope of your new creation. Lord, when the waters rise, and the waters have risen around us, Lord, especially in our spirit. And when our faith and hope are swept downstream, help each of us to remember to find you and be comforted. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bless you, Jimmy. Okay. Thank you. Where's Marshall?
Marshall. Good morning. Our county manager.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Cannon.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. In the aftermath of Hurricane Florence, we thought it was appropriate this morning to present some information on Hurricane Florence. First of all, we'll begin with a video that was the joint effort of the City of Fayetteville Public Information as well as our County Public Information Office. As you know, we had a joint information center in the EOC during the storm, and so this video is a joint effort. Following the video, Mr. Tracy Jackson, our Assistant County Manager, and also our Interim Emergency Services Director, will provide a presentation on the response and recovery during Hurricane Matthew.
Thank you.
While Justin's getting me set up, I just want to thank our Cumberland County PIO and the City of Fayetteville for that video. I think that was an excellent job. And I think it really shows all the team effort that went into responding to Hurricane Florence. I'll go ahead and say it because I know it's the question that's out there. Yes, we did learn from Hurricane Matthew. And I'll say to you this morning that we did much better. Obviously, there are things that we can always improve upon, but compared to Hurricane Matthew, I think that we're in a much better position. We learned some valuable lessons, and we're able to put those experiences to work during Hurricane Florence. So with that being said, I'll go through the presentation, and of course, if you have questions as I go through, don't hesitate to ask. I'll be glad to try to answer what we can. Have a number of people here in the room with us this morning, and I'll introduce those folks that are what I consider subject matter experts as we go through this. So we thank them for being here with us. So in terms of an overview of Hurricane Florence, there's several different areas in the response area and recovery area that we will go through this morning, from preparation to shelters, from damage assessments to FEMA services and operations. In terms of the response and preparation for Hurricane Florence, there were a number of things that we jumped into, things that we knew were going to be issues because of the nature of the emergencies that might happen. We talk about flooding, rains, and of course rivers rising. We began reaching out early on Sunday, the 9th, talking to our volunteer fire departments in the small municipalities, also throughout the week, just prepping them, giving them information, letting them know the important actions were being taken. We had requested assets in advance of the storm, so we weren't caught off guard in many different areas. We were ready, we were prepared. We pre-positioned vehicles and personnel. This was important because in previous storms, there were requests from fire departments and other entities for transportation through great partnerships with the school system. We can't thank them enough for everything they did during the storm, from shelters to transportation, and also fuel. We were able to have everything pre-positioned and ready to go. We had activity buses in each fire district, which was no small task to arrange and to provide. It's not just including our folks, that's from outside the county, and 65 different types of vehicles to help with the response. And let me go back up to planning and communications just to mention that we were very fortunate to have our Joint Information Center and the resources there. And of course, we did a number of media briefings, which many of you participated in or attended at the least. And we feel like this really helped to increase public awareness and to make folks aware, knowledgeable about those issues that could threaten their safety in their lives. And we were also fortunate to develop a good partnership with the National Weather Service. They were very integral to our response in being able to have timely information and make good decisions in the Emergency Operations Center, and can't say enough good things about those folks in Raleigh. This is just really a snapshot, and it just shows the different levels of expertise and capabilities that we had during Hurricane Florence. Again, a very different hurricane than Matthew, as we'll discuss in a little bit. We did not have as many water rescues as we did during Matthew. I'm sure different reasons for that, but we were prepared, and I think that the rescues that did take place were executed in a timely and professional manner, and I think it led to a number of lives being saved. In our Emergency Operations Center, we had a number of different folks from all over the county. And obviously, if you look at this picture, you see folks from Sheriff's Office, Emergency Management, Engineering and Infrastructure, Public Information. We were fortunate to have the State Fire Marshal and North Carolina Forestry send us an overhead team, and also the State of Oklahoma sent us several folks. So that helped augment our staff when we were operating on 12-hour shifts for several days. And, you know, we still ran into space issues. That's been an issue in the past. It's something that's important for us to continue to think about and to address. But at least having it organized differently and being able to put a JIC in a separate room, a Joint Information Center, I think that really made us more efficient. And having all that different expertise in the room also contributed to a successful execution of our mission. Something new that we tried in this hurricane that we had not done previously was to set up a non-emergency information line. I'll tell you now, this was probably one of the more successful endeavors that we put in place. And we had 3,000 calls that received. It was staffed 24/7 for a number of days. Some of the most popular questions came from folks wanting to know if they were in an evacuation zone. Our Information Services Department, on the fly, by the way, put together a map app that folks could use online and discover whether or not they were in the evacuation zone. So again, there's a number of people that contributed to the success of this response, and you'll hear about that throughout my presentation. And we are very thankful for the work that Information Services did to support us. Another popular question was, who do I call for transportation? FAST, our transportation service with the city, really rose to the challenge and met the need in terms of providing transportation. We're very fortunate to have their assistance in this effort. Overall, our response center, the non-emergency line, was staffed by more or less 15 staff over a period of days at different times, and city and county staff. So it was a joint effort. It wasn't just one or the other involved in the operation. When we look at the actual rescue operations, we had a very structured response in terms of the command and the delivery in the field, working closely with volunteer fire departments and then the different resources and assets that we had available to us in the Emergency Operations Center. We had swiftwater teams from Lincoln, Nebraska, Los Angeles, California, New York Task Force 1, a Coast Guard punt team, and a swiftwater rescue team from Andrew, North Carolina, which was a state asset, that all assisted with swiftwater rescues. We also had active duty Army and National Guard personnel that assisted with their equipment and their vehicles, which we could not have done what was done in the field without their assistance. And as you see there were 136 people rescued, a number of different animals in different situations that were also rescued. No effort, no mission goes well without smooth running logistics. So we were fortunate that Jim Grafstrom and his staff stepped up and provided us a space at the Crown Complex, not only for personnel to have sleeping space and to be fed, but also places to stage equipment and also to warehouse different items that were coming into us. So through the National Guard, the North Carolina Forestry Service, Cumberland County Forestry, and other different groups, we were also able to receive and distribute tractor trailers full of water and MREs from the Crown. The Crown Complex was also used to house hundreds of PWC, Duke Power, National Guard, and other folks from out of town, including shelter nurses. Over 3,000 cots eventually made it to Cumberland County for shelter residents and support teams. So I know that we'll talk about the numbers in the shelters, but it wasn't just cots we needed for our shelterees. We also needed them for hundreds of responders that helped us in this episode. When we look at the shelters, we actually, as a county, opened up more shelters than probably has ever been opened previously in this county. It was a challenge. And I would tell you that DSS and Public Health, they were shining stars. They rose to the challenge. We thank them for everything that they did. And they helped keep things running smoothly. They opened 7 shelters on Wednesday, September the 12th, before the storm hit, and had 105 workers staying in them for the first 3 days. So that's a tremendous sacrifice on those folks' part in terms of just being able to stay there and riding out the storm, and then being able to assist while their families were at home. We had 8 shelters set up at one point, housing up to 1,200 people. We eventually added another shelter. There were definitely folks in the community that were able to help us and stepped up, including Manna Church and True Vine Ministries. And the state established a shelter at the National Guard Armory on Owen Drive. As of last Friday, we had 153 shelterees remaining at a single shelter, and that's at Smith Recreation Center, which still remains open. We also had 2 pet-friendly shelters, one located at Pine Forest and one at Southview High Schools. And at peak, there were 71 dogs, 22 cats, 2 birds, and 1 rabbit at the 2 pet-friendly shelters. We also had to, as a precaution, evacuate our normal animal shelter. This was done early one morning, and again, as has been echoed, and you will hear again and again, there were a number of different agencies that stepped up and made things happen during this hurricane. We can't just spread the thank yous around, the appreciation around to just one particular group. There were so many different groups that made it a success. But solid waste, engineering and infrastructure, animal control, everybody lent a hand and got the remaining animals out of the shelter and moved those to the Crown Complex temporarily. And it was a successful mission, and we moved, I believe it was in the neighborhood of 125 animals in 2.5 hours. So no small feat with some of the creeks rising and getting that done, you know, before the roads were closed and we couldn't make it to the Crown Expo. We talk about recovery and damage assessments and where we're at now. As you can see, here's a graphic that compares Hurricane Florence to Hurricane Matthew. As it stands right now, we're looking at, as far as residential losses in the county, this is in unincorporated areas of the county, does not include Fayetteville, Hope Mill, or Spring Lake, 731 residential properties, the value loss of $28,119,667. You see the numbers from Matthew. So again, this we will find and we will discuss over time that this has been a very different hurricane than Matthew, and in particular for the county and the unincorporated areas. We definitely were hit harder in many different ways than we were during Matthew. When we look at the other numbers, we break this down further. There were 76 homes that were destroyed. 71 had major damage, which is defined as currently uninhabitable, and extensive repairs are needed to make them habitable. 382 had minor damage, and 202 were affected. A total of 15 commercial structures were damaged for an estimated loss of $1.8 million. Other things that we continue to do during recovery that will help our citizens are waiving permit fee, include waiving permit fees. So when it comes to inspections and planning, they'll be waiving fees for permits that are worth less than $15,000, excluding structural damage. Fees have been waived for building, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, insulation, and zoning permits due to hurricane damage. We talk about solid waste. Obviously, there's a lot of vegetative debris. There will be a lot of construction demolition debris that will have to be picked up. So fees are waived and hours extended for solid waste. The Wilkes Road brush facility, it's open now 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. The Ann Street facility is open Monday through Friday, 6:30 to 5 p.m. and then on Saturday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's very important for folks to be aware of debris collection processes. So there's been a non-emergency line set up for that, information line where folks can call to report their debris, and where they can also ask questions if they have any about the debris removal process. So as you see there, the graphic shows how to stage and place debris near the roadside, what should be placed next to the roadside, which shouldn't. This will be sent out. It'll be available online, also available in other formats, and continue to be pushed out over a period of months as we continue the debris removal process. On another front, the food nutrition efforts at DSS, obviously replacement food stamps have been issued. Disaster food stamps has started. It'll continue today through Saturday from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. This will be done at 2 different locations, the Department of Social Services and St. Luke AME Church for residents 60 and older and individuals with mobility issues. As far as replacement food stamps, there have been 12,441 applications approved. That's equivalent to 40% of existing cases in the county. As far as disaster food stamps, 5,133 were approved on Friday and Saturday for total benefits to be issued of approximately $1 million in the next 3 to 5 days. And we still have 6 full days to go of the application process. Now, I know many of you are familiar with the brochure that was put out during Hurricane Matthew. A similar brochure has been updated and additional resources added. So if folks have questions, they can access this brochure online, and there'll be also many printed copies available at different locations. So this is a great resource, and kudos to our Public Information Department for putting that together. They did a great job with that. We talk about well testing, another thing to think about in the rural areas of the county where folks don't have public water. If they're going to have wells tested, you need to look at, was your well submerged, and think that it needs to be tested. It does need to be tested. You shouldn't use drinking water until it's tested and rechlorinated by a certified well contractor. Environmental Health will test wells at no charge if the owner has a well rechlorinated and can provide a receipt for the work. A big issue that came up, obviously during Hurricane Florence, is the need for mosquito spraying. So the county has worked to put this in place. Truck spraying will start today countywide, except in Hope Mills and on Fort Bragg. They have their own contracts and handle that themselves. And that'll run through October 4th. And it'll occur at 5 to 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. to midnight daily on those dates. Aerial spraying is being considered, and a request for proposals will be put out for that. We talk about FEMA recovery. FEMA was here early, contacting us, asking about establishing a disaster recovery center, so we're very thankful for their partnership and their work, and we will work very closely with FEMA to provide what we can in terms of assistance and information to them. With us this morning, just a quick introduction, is Tamiko Exford with FEMA.
Good morning, everyone. I will be
Good morning.
your Intergovernmental Affairs liaison, and I'm happy to. Good morning. I'm Tamiko Exford with FEMA's Intergovernmental Affairs Division. I will be your elected official liaison. They have my contact information there, and I'll be providing you updates as I receive them. I have your email addresses, and you are welcome to reach out to me if you have other questions and concerns. Thank you for having me in the great state of North Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So right now, the Disaster Recovery Center is open 7 days a week, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Sunday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So I know you have a lot of questions this morning, so we'll try to answer what we can as best we can.
Questions from anyone?
I have a quick question.
Right.
Tracy, the biggest difference I saw between Florence and Matthew, I know that we were prepared for everything we possibly could be. The only thing that I think we weren't prepared for was the mosquitoes. Was that a function of where things were flooded, or was that a function of the actual time of year? I mean, Matthew was a little later in the year, but we didn't see these kind of mosquitoes back then. So we didn't foresee this. So what?
Right. I'm not your mosquito expert. I'll be the first one to admit it. All I know is what I've read, and it sounded like, I hate to say the perfect storm, but it did sound like a situation where you had the flooding that came in post-hurricane, and it just was the right breeding ground for the different types of mosquitoes that were out there. And we had an explosion of mosquitoes that we're seeing. So,
Well, to follow up, everything I read tells us that this won't be the last one we see. So in our post-mortem, I think probably somebody needs to identify what the cause of these mosquitoes were and see if those conditions are going to prevail again. And if so, we'll be ready for that. I mean, we can already have our mosquito people ready.
yeah, I think for future purposes, it's valuable for us to go ahead and have a contract in place.
Exactly.
So that we're prepared, whether we need it or not. It's there. You can pull the trigger and have the work done, and have the folks kind of in waiting. So that's definitely something that we're looking at for the future.
Thank you.
Mr. Key.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tracy, I think you hit on a lot of key topics, and what I saw in this response was the partnerships, and there was a lot of them.
Yes, sir.
And you know, I think that it'd be appropriate, you know, for the chairman, that we can get a good list and really express our gratitude to so many of these different people that came all the way from California, and then our next door neighbors at Fort Bragg, who were an integral part. There were so many partnerships that we had that, fortunately for us, we didn't have to initialize, but they were ready, and
right.
that's just as important. One of the things that I've heard from a lot of people, and I know that we did this on a very limited basis, but with the information that we had, and I think it's important for everybody to know that the Cape Fear River rose almost 50 feet in 5 days. What was it, 5 or 6 days?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's unheard of, and preparing for that was a task in itself. But we had some controlled releases of water bodies to help the capacity. Is there any discussion going on about, if we know these things are coming, to lower the reservoirs so that the capacity may not have as much damage? I know the Corps of Engineers would be the integral part on this.
Right, and that was a question I asked of the National Weather Service, because they are familiar with the Corps of Engineers. They work with them closely in terms of whether or not water's being released in these situations, and they figure that into their estimates, their formulas for the river cresting. So based on what I was told, this particular incident, I don't know anything about the past, that things were done properly. They had plans. They were executed the way they're supposed to be executed. I don't have any information at this point in time, to lead me to believe that anything different happened. So, you know, what we saw was a large amount of water dropping in the basin above us, rushing downstream. I say rushing, but it took days for it, you know, but it rose quickly over a period of days. You know, it's shocking to see it at 11 feet, and then to see it at the bottom of the bridge over Person Street in that short a period of time, and then not really going down, and then wondering, well, how much more will it rise, and not knowing. There were some touch and go moments, just like there usually are with these type of events, but I think we're fortunate, and I do think that not only locally, but it sounded like to me, at least for us in Cumberland County, there were some things that were well planned by other groups outside the county that helped us.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Booth?
Thank you, sir. Tracy, this was the best description of what people say about ducks in the water. Everyone looks like they're just sitting there all nice and calm, but they're paddling like hell underneath. That was what I was most impressed with here. Is the first couple of days of the EOC, there was, you know, everyone was where they were supposed to be. The county department here, the city folks here. But what I was really impressed with is about the day 2 or day 3, everybody was everywhere. If somebody had an idea that was better than what was going on at the table beside them, nobody was shy about chirping in because it was a learning process the whole way. I think that those photos and others taken by our staff and the aerial drone photos taken by City Councilman Jim Arp were a much better indicator than, no offense, Steve, I don't think you have anything to do with photography, but I picked up the newspaper and several relatives, friends elsewhere, went online and saw epic storm. And the front page article was 4 people in PFDs in knee-deep water with 4 ropes on it, and the house was right there for that wall, wheeling one lady out in knee-deep water with restraining ropes. She had a life vest on, and everybody came over there, and the rescue was 15 feet. And that was just not indicative of what was going on down the street where they're having to get people off of off of their rooftop houses. So,
but it is different. And not to interrupt, but I would say too that the velocity of that water, it moves fast. So even if it's knee deep, it's still very dangerous, and they still have to take the same precautions. But the public doesn't realize that.
But
you're right.
10 years from now, or hopefully never, but next storm, we look back at the next epic storm, there's going to be the archives of the Fayetteville Observer, and it's going to show, Florence was a knee-deep thing. And then the second page, if you go to page 2 or 4, the lady's kids are in their tennis shoes laughing because mom's being brought out piggyback by a rescue guy laughing, and she's giggling too, and they're the only ones in the water. And it's like he wanted to make sure she was in the water. So I don't think that the Observer did justice to the hard work and the perilous situations that the county was in to record epic storm. I encourage everybody to go back and look. The most is knee deep. Most of it's dry or ankle deep, and people are walking and laughing. And I didn't see any laughing going on when I was driving around to all these different sites. So you're to be commended for it. It was not what happened in the newspaper. This is what our county looked like.
We had a number of situations that obviously were life-threatening, very dangerous situations. You think about Spring Lake and Little River in the Manchester area, where we were looking at the potential for it matching Hurricane Matthew and then well exceeded it. It was, very scary moments, but we were, through our PIO and a number of other different groups able to capture that. And we're very fortunate to have that and have it documented. You're right. So.
Thank you very much.
Any other comment?
One more.
One more.
I'm sorry. I don't know whether or not we are going to be able to write a letter to all of the county employees and city employees, all the municipal employees who work so hard around the clock. I don't know how you did what you did and remained so calm. I saw in the paper, referring to the paper, I hate to refer to the paper, Mike, but but I did see a description that was related to, I think it was from Matt Leclerc, where the newspaper was working around the clock, and they were sleeping on cots and sleeping on the floor and all that kind of stuff just to get the paper out, get the news out. But I know that our employees did the same kind of thing. There is no way that we can repay anybody. No two storms are alike, and it made me reflect how many storms I've been through in different situations in life. I won't tell you when the first one was, because Glenn will then say that I am the O word. But I remember where I was and what I was doing. But you learn from every single situation. And what impressed me so much was how our personnel adjusted on the fly, because everything was changing all the time. There was nothing stable, and there was no way that you could anticipate what was going to happen next. I had some calls. Fortunately, well, I shouldn't say that, but my landline just got hooked back up over the weekend. It was out. Had some visits to my house, wanting different things. My cell phone blew up. I think I was just happy that no employees, we didn't lose any employees. At the shelters, our employees were there. They worked around the clock. I have had some calls about how we're going to repay. There is no repay. I said, this is what the county, your county does for you. This is what the city municipal workers do for you. This is what the towns do for you. We don't do the glamorous work. But when the rubber hits the road, we're there. So, thank you.
I would say, too, we're very fortunate to not have a large loss of life. I mean, any life lost is tragic, but I think it shows in terms of our ability to respond. And I would say to you, this is from my perspective, having been through 6 hurricanes, and I would say that out of the 6, probably 2 were very well executed in terms of the way the response was handled. It takes me back to Hurricane Floyd and to this one, to be honest with you. When I came to Cumberland County about 3.5 years ago, I would tell you, and I think you know this, that we weren't prepared for a major hurricane the way we should have been. We are today, and we will be even better prepared for the future. So thank you for your support and for what you do for us to enable us to provide these kinds of responses.
Thank you. Any other comment? Amy, are we going to see our friend again?
Yes.
She's moved over to the side over there.
Yes, sir. I think Ms. Exford has a little bit of information to share with us. So, Ms. Exford, would you come forward, please?
And welcome again.
Thank you. My most important message is to make sure that all of your residents in the area register for FEMA assistance, and they can do that by going to the website. They can do it online, or they can call the 800 numbers. And I think that a lot of them are familiar with the process since they were unfortunately affected also in Hurricane Matthew. So also you all kind of know what our programs offer, and if you have questions, you can call me, and I'm happy to come and meet with you. If you would like me to have a face-to-face meeting with you, we can do that at your convenience. Just let me know what your needs are. Or if something comes up, if you have any residents that you feel that they are not in the shelter, or they're not getting the assistance that they need, or if someone has access functional needs and you think that they need additional assistance, someone that may have barriers with language or education, we want to make sure that there is no one that needs help that's not able to get it for any of those reasons. Also, part of our process and our application process is to apply for an SBA loan. A number of people push back when they say we're already devastated, we don't need a loan. Well, they don't have to accept the loan if they're approved. However, if they're declined to get the loan, that puts them back onto the FEMA side of programs where they can get additional assistance, but they will not be able to get the other needs assistance if they don't apply for the SBA loan. So please encourage that if you have some people that are saying that they're not interested in a loan and they don't want to apply, because that is just part of our process. Also, the grants portal is up, and you can begin putting in your information to apply for public assistance. We have not established a date for the applicant briefing yet. When that comes out, I'll be sure to let you know to make sure that you are invited to the applicant briefing as well as connected to your program delivery manager. So please call me if you need me, and I'll be in town and in the surrounding areas, so I can get here pretty easily.
Questions? Comments?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I skipped over item number 1, approval of the agenda.
We were getting ready to go back to that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I
And
apologize.
more important things here, and great to hear all the positive things in spite of what went.
I move that we
Approval of the
approve the
agenda. Have a motion. Mr. Booth made a second, so everyone and all those in favor? That's-
Unanimous.
That's unanimous, all right? Now we're down to consent agenda,
Yes, sir. Item number 3 is the consent agenda.
okay?
Move for approval.
Okay,
Second.
okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull item 2C, 2E, 2F, 2G, and 2J, but I will take them all as one action item.
Say that again? 3?
2,
You mean
3.
2C, 2E, 2F, 2G, and 2J, but we'll talk as
You mean
one.
three.
item.
You mean
Three.
We're talking about 3.
I'm trying to figure
I
out
stand
what
corrected, 3.
Okay,
Okay, try it again.
okay. I got
Three what?
3C,
3,
3E, 3F, and 3G.
yes, correct.
Correct, Jim? Okay,
And that-
okay.
Okay.
Did we have a motion?
I have a request too.
Okay,
My little button's on there.
Okay.
I'd like to take 3W2 off consent.
3W2. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I believe that Commissioner Fairclough made a motion. Okay, we had a second, right?
Yes.
All those in favor, and then we'll do what's been removed. Okay.
What are we voting on?
Okay.
Everything
The
except.
consent agenda
Everything
minus
except
the-
that, okay.
Yes, everything except, okay?
Unanimous.
Okay, now, all right, Jimmy, you have the floor.
And Madam Clerk, I'm going to talk about these collectively as one, and I'll bring this to the attorney. I noticed that when we're disposing of sale of surplus property, that there are significant, and I mean very significant differences on a lot of these between the tax value of something and what the sale price, some of them almost less than 15% of what the tax value is. But some of the others are more in line with the tax value. I'd like an opinion from the attorney first, but I believe that in these 5 that I've pulled off, the county is going to be getting $50,000 on a taxation value of almost $350,000. And to me, that just seems like maybe our stewardship should ask for a little bit more oversight on some of these items that are at a certain percentage. So, Mr. Attorney, if you could let me go through the process with me about why we're accepting something as little as 10 or 15% of the value of a property, and does the Board of Commissioners have any authority to reject any of these bids?
Yes, sir, Mr. Keefe. The process, we have a surplus property list that's on our website and a paper copy in the office, and included on that list is the price that the county has in the property in terms of the foreclosure process cost and the taxes that were for which the property was foreclosed on. Just in numbers, looking at the first one you mentioned, 3C, that $11,410.32 was what the county's judgment was on this property when it was foreclosed upon. It is my understanding from the former manager, Mr. Martin, that the board had a policy in place that no bid would be accepted on the property less than the county's price. And I have always provided the bid amount, the tax value, what we can find out about the property in the public records, for instance, the zoning, when we can, I don't think that, well, that's on when we bring it to you the first time, all that information on it, and then I've repeated the numbers in a shorthand way, you know, that this was a single-family 10 zoning with a tax value of $72,600, and there is a structure, we can't tell what it is from the GIS, but there is a structure on that lot. So if the board wishes to adopt or give us direction to change that process, we are certainly willing to do so. Some of these, or I can tell you, most of these are never going to, never going to bring the tax value in terms of the process we use, unless there is a pretty decent dwelling or structure on there.
Well, okay, Mr. Attorney, and I accept that, but then I would ask the next question. Is it fair to the homeowner or the property owner that we're taxing a piece of property at a value that it would never bring at a sale?
Most of the folks who buy these lots, this is what they do. I mean, this is not like people off the street that walk in.
I understand, and they're getting an incredible deal. Mr. Chair, I think what I'd like to do is ask the policy committee to consider reevaluating our approval of sale of surplus real property located, and make a recommendation if the current way we do things is acceptable, or possibly look at a new way.
Okay.
And let me also point out to the board, this is not an acceptance of an offer. The board has accepted the offer on all these properties at some prior date. This one was on August the 6th, 2018. It was advertised, and no further bid was made. So if you do have the right to reject the bid at any time, in an instance like this where we accepted the offer, we would certainly bear the cost of the advertising and directly from by the county if we were to reject this offer and repay this bid. So I just want to let the board know that.
And Mr. Chair, I have no problem with letting this go, because the rules were the rules at this time, and I would support as it is now, but I would request possibly.
Mr. Booth.
W-2, just very briefly, we started having a little fuzzy feeling about 2 years ago about our then present situation. Those fuzzy feelings came to fruition about a year or so ago. We've been looking into it, and now this is a 2-year part-time thing, and I just think 4 years to do something is a little too long. So
What is the item?
W-2, the approval of the interim or the current 2-year agreement with Chernoff Diamond for health and benefits package.
Mm-hmm.
So we started talking about this, I think, the second meeting I was here, about looking to get something new long-term for more benefits, less cost, combination more benefits, less cost, something. And we've been looking into it. Now this is going to put us off having to make a decision for 4 years.
Mr. Chair, as a Finance Committee Chair, I can maybe give some insight on that.
Okay.
This would not, they are an oversight of our program. And Madam Manager, correct me if I'm wrong, because we had this discussion. This would not preclude us from actually going with another health insurance company, but they are merely the oversight and our broker of sorts for this time period until we stabilize what we believe was a very, it was a roller coaster of healthcare costs. That was the purpose of this 2-year agreement, to stabilize, but it does not restrict us from looking at another insurance company.
I didn't see any further directives of them to do
We're
anything.
going with that one.
I think there was additional information that was background information that was included, and a scope of services in the Finance Committee agenda, and I don't believe that we attached that here. But this broker, Chernoff Diamond, will essentially do the exact same services from the healthcare side and the ancillary benefit side that any other broker would do. As Ms. Evans presented to the Finance Committee, as the events turned and we moved away from the health savings accounts, we found ourselves in a situation that we needed to go ahead and to research all the additional benefits provided employees, the cafeteria benefits. That heavy lift was really done by Chernoff Diamond in March, April, and May, and we actually had a new enrollment process, computer process set up through Chernoff Diamond. Staff felt like bringing on another broker would create disruption and in services, but it does not prevent this group from looking at health insurance. In fact, that's part of their charge this fall as we go to a new enrollment for next July 1.
right, Mr. Keefe, your items?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If Mr. Bruce is satisfied, I will make a motion that we approve items 3C, 3E, 3F, 3G, and 3J.
Okay, you've heard the motion. We have a second?
Are we including,
That would be up to Mr. Bruce.
We'll get Michael next.
Someone can throw
W2?
that, someone can throw that in there, I don't.
You want to throw that one in?
I'll throw that.
I'm just, that's what I'm saying, I just.
And W2.
All right.
and W2?
All right, you-
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Voting in favor, Commissioners Fairclough, Keefe, Council Chairman Lancaster, Commissioner Adams. Voting in opposition, Commissioner Booth.
Okay. Thank you. Now we're at items of business.
Yes, sir. Item 4A is consideration and approval of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Legislative Goals Recommendations. Ms. Shutt.
Good morning.
Good
Good morning.
The North Carolina Association of County Commissioners has outlined the process for developing the association's goals for the 2019-2020 biennium. And so by Friday, October 5th, they've set a goal for counties to submit the goal recommendations. In October, their steering committee will meet and review those. In November, it will go before the Legislative Goals Committee. The Board of Directors will review those recommendations. And then January, the association holds the Legislative Goals Conferences. And then they will select their slate of state legislative goals. Now, as part of Cumberland County's process, we reached out to the commissioners and to the leadership team, and we asked for legislative goals. And the following goals are being presented to you for your consideration this morning. In the area of agriculture, to support state funding and staffing for agricultural research, cooperative extension services, and other agriculture-related efforts to support the largest economic driver in North Carolina. In Cumberland County, for 2016, agriculture was responsible for more than $90 million in cash receipts. About 1/5 of the acreage in our county is devoted to farmland and agriculture. And I know you're well aware of the work that Cooperative Extension does in our county, reaching out beyond the agricultural community to other citizens through programs such as 4-H, Master Gardener Volunteers, Better Living Series, and much, much more. The public health goal. This is actually a goal that has been brought forth by the North Carolina Association of Local Health Directors, and they are asking for approval of funding for a communicable disease nurse positions in county public health departments. It would cost about $8 million to spread those nurses throughout all 100 counties. In Cumberland County, that would amount to about $80,000, and that was a goal that you had included in your state legislative goals. In the area of mental health, to restore state single-stream funding for mental health services and support public managed care for the mental health, substance use, and intellectually developmentally disabled populations. Single-stream funding is separate from Medicaid funding, and its primary purpose is to provide much needed behavioral health and services to the uninsured and underinsured. Without access to such services, uninsured and underinsured individuals are more likely to be homeless and end up in jails and emergency departments. In FY 18 and 19, Alliance Behavioral Health Care, of which Cumberland County is a member county, reductions totaled more than $14.8 million in recurring funds and $26.3 million in non-recurring, for a total of $41.1 million. In the area of social services, we have the goal of increased funding and enhanced services for adult protective services and guardianship while improving behavioral health services. Increased funding for guardianship and adult protective services has been recommended by the ad hoc work group that was established by the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Joint Legislative Committee on Health and Human Services. For Cumberland County DSS, the number of adult protective services and guardianship cases continues to rise, and state funds have remained stagnant. State funding to support these services has been very limited, and it's resulting in counties funding these services when the limited federal block grant funds are exhausted. With the divestiture of local county mental health system, DSS remains the only entity to serve as disinterested public guardians. An additional social services goal is to preserve federal and state block grants for county-administered programs, to oppose unfunded mandates, and prevent unnecessary workload issues. And then the third social services goal is to enhance current Medicaid overpayment recoupment plan mandate to include an error rate threshold and appeal rights for counties. Right now, counties are expected to maintain a 0% error rate for Medicaid eligibility determination, while the federal requirement is no more than 3%. So the goal or the request is to align the state-mandated error rate with the federal allowance, and this will to reduce the financial hardship on counties. By increasing and improving the NC FAST functionality, that will help reduce the eligibility determination errors, and also to create a process that allows counties the right to formally appeal any proposed financial recoupment for just cause. This would be an amendment to Senate Law 2017-57 section, and it's listed there. And in the area of public education, we have a library goal, and that is to increase funding to state aid to public libraries by $3 million recurring dollars in order to restore state aid to pre-recession funding, and additionally to fund NC Kids by $200,000 in recurring funds. Those are the goals that have been submitted from your leadership team. And for your consideration this morning to then forward to NCACC.
Commissioner Keefe.
Thank you. Ms. Shutt, how do these relate to our county goals?
How do these relate to?
Our county goals of what we're looking for. I mean, I see public education as, you know, a big part of what we do here in Cumberland County, and the only goal we have is considering the libraries. There's no goals that we want to move forward as a county to our leadership at the NCAA.
And if you have suggested goals to add this morning, we can add those in. These were the ones that we sent out and asked for submissions. So these were the ones that received to bring forward.
We had a conversation with our local delegation 6 months ago that came up with a number of other initiatives. Very few of those seem to have made this list. Our legislative
for
delegation.
State, and these are for goals that will be considered across the state to be submitted for their, as the associations, to consider them to press forward. Our goals were more specific to Cumberland County. And they do have additional, I mean, we can include additional funding for capital projects and pull those and add those as well under those.
Well, I guess my part is I see so many opportunities on here at a state level that it's almost like we have our head in the sand on so many things. Our MCO of mental health, our mental health program in the state of North Carolina certainly has opportunities that it can be a better program, but we really just talk about how much we're cutting it. I mean, they are cutting the mental health services. You just said the alliance by, what was it, $14 million? So what's going to happen to mental health services in Cumberland County when these continually get reduced? And one of the other things that I look at is we've heard for 3 to 4 years that looks to be a consolidation of mental health MCOs in our community. is the board in, do they have any opinion on that? Is that going to help? Maybe I'm just not understanding, but a lot of these just seem to be very driven to a very small section of all the issues that we have in Cumberland County, and I'm sure other counties have too. There's no public safety initiative on here at all, which I find sort of odd. But
and Commissioner Keefe, so what public safety, now's the opportunity that you can bring to the board. So do you have a public safety goal that you would like to add? And then we can add it to the slate now.
Well, and I put a pretty significant proposal together when we spoke with our legislative delegation on that. And, you know, I would hope that the association would also be in touch with the legislative delegation, because that's how rules get changed. But I'm just going to leave it now. It just seems that it's very, very general and it's not very specific to Cumberland County. Thank you.
Commissioner Glenn Adams.
And, you know, and I will tell you that that's our fault. You sent us the email telling us to send this in. I mean, we did. We had the opportunity to do that. It came across ask us, I think on a couple of occasions, to send any goals that we may have had. And I think the State Association puts a deadline on it, and that's why you had to move forward on that. I do have one request on the mental health issue, is that I saw you talk about the single stream funding. I would like to add just that they cease the reoccurring cuts that are happening to behavior health and mental health. They're doing some single stream, but they're also doing the reoccurring, and I think the reoccurring are just as dangerous, especially for all the LMEs and throughout the state, and we can word it right, but
yes, sir.
I think we need to talk about those reoccurring cuts.
Okay, so under that mental health goal, we can add that. And back to Commissioner Keefe. Commissioner Keefe, we can pull from our approved Cumberland County State Legislative slate for this year, and we can take, so what we approved, what the board approved for that was specific for the short session, and it was very specific to that. I can take a broader look at that and add those to this for public safety and education.
If you would, but I'd like the rest of the commission to, of course, vote on that to make sure that that's
And
okay.
we have a very tight deadline. It's due Friday.
This item was originally on the September Policy Committee, but that meeting was canceled because we didn't have a quorum. So we moved it to the September 17th meeting. We had to cancel that for Hurricane Florence. Hence, that gets us to today. I will say this, that the goals that are submitted to the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners are supposed to be more broad-based goals that are not county-specific. And so we can go back and take a look at that, but the association is not at this level going to pick up a county-based goal. They're looking at things from a more statewide approach.
Which is what I was going to state. There are fights, Jimmy. There are fights from different, disagreements. Commissioners don't fight. There are disagreements from different parts of the state, and I know that we have sent our whole program there. Sally did it when we developed ours, and there's almost no reason to change what we've got. The last time to change it, you can go through the legislative goals committee meetings, and the last time to change it is really in January when we all meet together and you can stand up and fight for your case. But I've been there, and it's difficult, and as Glenn says, and as you know, that almost if you put something in that is specific to only one county, it is not going forward. Because different different counties and different regions of the state. Now, not to
It's great.
ignore it.
No, I understand it. I
Yeah,
understand.
but I want to, as a past chair, I want to go ahead and send these today, if we can, because the state committee is meeting next week. And if we don't go ahead and approve it, we're going to be completely left out of the process. Meanwhile, we take a side issue and go to the legislative goals meetings held in Raleigh and see if we can try to change things. Okay, so I move that we approve the goals.
Right before you said that, Commissioner Fairclough.
I'll second the motion, but I was just going to say that I'm chairman of the Tax and Finance Committee, and we meet on the 24th. So whatever comes down in Tax and Finance, our committee will be focusing in on that. And if there are 10 goals, we'll probably be trying to get them to 3.
Right.
So a lot of stuff's going to be trimmed before it ever gets there. And then once the committees are through narrowing everything down, then it's going to the board. And then, as Jeanette says, in January, we're all meeting in Raleigh or somewhere, and all the commissioners in the state that want to be there can have a say-so at that point. So it'll get
Okay.
narrowed down.
All right, Commissioner Booth and then Commissioner Key.
I mean, I'm going to vote for this, but I don't see the dire speed need. Like you said, it's for the whole state. We're one of the largest metro areas in the state, so we're for education, we're for libraries, we're for law enforcement, we're for helping the people with mental health, and if we don't send that up there, we're not going to get any money. I mean, so I mean, I'm going to vote for it, but it's just so generic that I don't think it's going to be devastating. If we don't send anything, they're not going to say, well, Cumberland didn't respond, so we're going to cut them off from libraries, health, mental health, law enforcement. So I mean, it's like you said, can't be county specific, so we don't know what we're going to get, who's going to get it, how it's going to help us. So we're basically for all these things, or against them if they're bad.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Jimmy, take us home.
I will make this, Sally, two things. First of all, did Cumberland County did contribute anything to these goals, or are these the standard goals?
Yes, these goals.
Which specifically came from Cumberland County?
The agricultural goal, we have that from Cooperative Extension, Public Health.
Lisa
Lisa Childers, I'm sorry. Lisa Childers. The Public Health goal you have approved, and that came from Rod Jenkins, who is in the room and can speak to it. The mental health goal, we reached out to Alliance Behavioral Health Care, Dwayne Holder, and Alliance Behavioral Health Care. Social services, the 3 social services goals came from Brenda Jackson, who would be here this morning, but Secretary Mandy Cohen is at DSS right now visiting the FNS disaster food stamps and holding a media event. Those 3 came from Brenda Jackson directly. The public education goal came from Jody Richesher, our library director.
Okay, so
I did
are
not
these in line with the current, and Marshall, I mean, you may have better idea, are these in line with our current state goals? I mean, are these gonna be individual to Cumberland County? Or is Mecklenburg County and Forsyth County and all Buncombe County and everybody else doing the same things?
NCACC develops and has categories for their goals. Commissioner Faircloth mentioned one, tax is one of those. Education is one.
So
agriculture is one.
So department heads are putting these through? Department heads are putting
Yes,
these
sir,
through?
but I did request that the commissioners submit their goals as well. I made that request.
Okay. Hey, hold on, please, just a sec. I've been sitting through Public Safety Task Force for over a year, and I've heard almost every single county in this state is having problems with funding of rural fire departments and things, and I know that is so where would that responsibility have been? Because I'm just one commissioner. Even if I put it on, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make it. It doesn't necessarily make the goal. We have to have a meeting to say that this is a commissioner's response, not just Jimmy Keefe's response, right?
As we did with the state, our state agenda, you submitted those, and then it went before the full board, first through the policy committee, and then the full board voted on it. And as the county manager explained, this could not come before the policy committee because of scheduling issues, so it's before you now. That particular item under public safety, I believe, would fall under either taxing if you're asking for a dedicated public safety tax, or statewide, or it would go under a public safety category.
Look for it to be part of the conversation. That's all I want it to be. All right, thank you.
We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor?
Voting in favor, Commissioners Faircloth, Council Chairman Lancaster, Commissioners Booth and Adams. Voting in opposition, Commissioner Keith.
All right, thank you. All right, County Manager.
Item 4A, Mr. Chairman, is consideration and approval of Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Amendment. This is for Hurricane Matthew, and the agreement is with the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Management. Mr. Jackson.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Have a couple of people here in the room I'd like to introduce just quickly and briefly associated with these topics. We have John Ebbickhausen. He's the Assistant Director of Resiliency of North Carolina Emergency Management. And a couple other familiar faces you'll recognize, Sylvia McLean with our Community Development Department, our CDBG DR consultant, and then, of course, Gene Booth, our Emergency Management Coordinator. So we have before you an amendment to the existing Memorandum of Agreement for CDBG DR. As you know through different conversations, this has evolved over time. We're at the point now where we have an existing MOA, but in order to move forward, we're at a crossroad, and staff is recommending that we adopt this amendment to the existing MOA and turn over responsibilities for CDBG-DR, primary responsibilities, to the state of North Carolina so that they can execute the programs that are pending and help the folks that have applied for the different types of aid that is out there. I will tell you that standing here today, it's been a challenging road when it comes to getting where we're at. It has been longer than we had hoped, but we went into this with no illusions. We understood, based on what we had seen in other parts of the country with these federal programs that have been passed down to states, that they are lengthy programs. They're complicated programs. They're convoluted. And they're out of our control, to be honest with you. This is an important amendment. I do not make light of it, because not only are we turning over responsibility to the state for the programs, but if you recall, there was also an agreement with the city of Fayetteville, and the state allowed us to be the lead entity for the county and all the municipalities in Cumberland County. And as part of that process and part of those requirements, we had to enter into a separate agreement with the city of Fayetteville that made it more or less a subservient agreement to the agreement we had with the state. So what we're asking now is that if you approve this agreement, that the city of Fayetteville will become its own subrecipient responsible to the state for its own projects. And we believe that's going to relieve a tremendous burden on our staff, and it's going to help move some of these projects along quicker by allowing them to do that. So a number of different things that you'll see here in this agreement. I know there are probably a lot of questions associated with it,
Yep.
and we will do our best to fill those.
Question number one.
I don't have a question. I will tell you, Tracy, I think that it has been a long road. This is a better, I'm still not going to support it, but it's a better, it's a better position that we're in than when we started. I think there's still some things that I just don't like about it in terms of what the state's doing, but I do think this puts us in a much better position. I will congratulate staff for listening to the issues that we had. I think you addressed most of them that you could address.
Yes.
And so I think the staff has moved this tremendously. So I do say, take my hats off to you all for that.
You still on?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Lewis?
And I agree with everything except for I will be supporting it because that way we're not going to hear about how we're impeding anybody's ability to do their own little projects in the city, or that we're somehow or another the stumbling block or holding them back or anything like that at all. Everybody, it's like you going and picking up my allowance from mom and dad, and we'll all just, if you're supposed to cut the grass and I'm supposed to do something, we'll all deal directly with mom and dad now, and that's the way it ought to be. We shouldn't be the pass-through for the city on any of their financial sources.
Thank you, my friend. Commissioner Keith?
Thank you. I also am going to be supporting this, but Tracy, I do have a concern about the people that have gone through this system the whole time working with the county, and now the perception that now I have to go through the state. How are we going to monitor to make sure that these people continue to receive, that they are getting feedback, that their process continues to go along? What sort of responsibility does the county continue to maintain?
We continue to maintain that responsibility, and I would tell you that from our staff point of view, even if that wasn't in the agreement, we would feel compelled to make sure that these folks are moving through because they are our citizens. And so what we'll have is kind of a partnership, if you want to describe it that way, and it truly is a partnership with the state, making sure that folks move through the application process, continue to move through, that they're hitting the steps along the way that have been spelled out so that they can get their projects completed. And so we'll be there. We are the local entity that works closely with the citizens. The state will rely upon us, for that communication, that contact. And it has been challenging at times in terms of getting communication back and forth, making sure that it's kind of that three-way communication between the state, the county, and the recipient. But there is at least a software program in place that allows us to monitor the applications, and we'll still have access to that.
And which
I don't
department?
believe any of that changes. Is that correct? So.
And is community development going to be the point of contact department for this throughout the process?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is there any discretionary money for counties on this, or is it 100% going to be filtered through the state?
Describe what you mean by
discretionary. Like we have ability to direct any funding. Are we totally out of this game now?
We have the ability to request projects.
Okay.
And because the budgets are two-year budgets, there'll have to be some flexibility. I was talking to Mr. Ebbinghausen before he's been in North Carolina for many, many years in different capacity. But he has a wealth of experience dealing with these types of programs. From a staff level, I have to say that I'm more confident in what's in place with the state today than I have been in the past. I think that the Division of Emergency Management has worked hard to get the right people in the right places and to put processes in place that will make the program more efficient. Is it where it needs to be today? I'm not going to say that I believe that 100%. I think we're way better off than we were as a state. But it's a day-by-day progress in terms of getting where the state needs to be. And I think they're working hard on it. I think they have everybody dedicated to it. So, I'm putting a lot of faith in them to execute, and I think they can do it based on what I've been told and what I see.
Okay, and finally, are the placeholder items that we placed, are they now permanent holders?
They have been added into the agreement, so they are where they need to be. And again, like I said, because it is kind of a short budget in the respect of executing some of these programs, one of the things that we requested from the front end of this was that there be flexibility. That's been discussed. It's been expressed to us that we will have flexibility. So that is my understanding of the way the program's intended. But also keep in mind that ultimately we are bound by federal rules and requirements for all these programs. Okay. So as much as they can, they'll be flexible.
Right. This is a key point of my support is
yes.
that we do have flexibility on these placeholder places. We do have flexibility.
We do have flexibility. There are funds there. So if you're asking if we change a program, let's say we had a multi-housing family program a multifamily housing program, and you want to change it to infrastructure. It has to go back through the process.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's basically, there's no guarantees, but you do have the ability to go through the process to make changes.
Thank you.
That's my understanding, unless there's anything that's...
Any other comments
Well,
before we take a vote?
and if I could tell, Jimmy, and I think, though, that if you change the process, if you read through the agreement, if the state determines you can't finish it by the deadline, the money's going to revert back to the state and not to the county. So if you're going to do any changes, you have to do them really, really early and really, really quickly.
Right.
Call for your vote. We have a motion.
Yes, I move that we hold our nose and vote for this, please.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I didn't hear the motion, I'm sorry.
She said
Hold
the
your nose
motion
and
is to
vote.
hold our nose and vote for this.
We're still talking about
Matthew.
Matthew. Matthew's about ready to have a second birthday.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we
Thank
have a
you.
motion and a second. All those in favor?
Is the motion to approve the
As-
community development block grant as
Yes.
presented?
As
to me?
it is.
That's what you
Okay.
said you were going to approve.
All right.
You said you're going,
I'm
yeah.
not holding my nose.
You
I'm
holding your
okay.
nose.
Voting in favor, Commissioners Faircloth, Keith, and Council, Chairman Lancaster, Commissioner Booth. Voting in opposition, Commissioner Adams.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, also related to Hurricane Matthew is item 4C. It's consideration and approval of DRA 2017, which is a memorandum of agreement between the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Management, and Cumberland County.
Tracy, you still up?
Yes, sir.
All right.
So this, again, a very important program. And I've looked at these programs, and from the beginning, we anticipated that there would have to be multiple opportunities for folks to be able to navigate this system and have an opportunity to get the funding they need for their projects. When I say projects, I'm talking about mainly acquisitions, which are buyouts, of residential properties that were damaged during Hurricane Matthew. So on the front end of this, there were a number of people right after Hurricane Matthew that applied for hazard mitigation grant program monies that were not in a floodplain. Because of the limited funding that was available across North Carolina to address all the needs that were out there, the state decided on the front end to only address folks that lived in the floodplain. Okay, so that's where we had our two houses that we worked with and brought to the board that were approved for hazard mitigation grant funding previously. So another way to kind of fill the gap for folks that are out there that may not qualify for one program or another is this DRA 17. So this is an original agreement, a new agreement for us, for the county, so that we can move forward with those other homes that were not in the floodplain that need to be addressed. And they have added some additional funding to this program for the management of it. So that's where we're at today. We're looking to get this agreement approved so we can move forward with those other homes that did not get approved because they weren't in a floodplain.
Okay, Commissioner Booth?
On like reimbursement, Roman numeral 4, if we miss some sort of 15-day deadline that's listed in there, are we subject to not being reimbursed? I mean, does it count electronically? Does a fax, a scan, an email count? I just don't want to.
Right.
Yeah, and then also right above that, it says all must be approved by them. Do they have a time limit on approving? We send it up to them November 1st. Do they just get back to us, or do they have some? You know, we have a contractor, we have an issue going on that has a time limit. And then we send it up to them for approval because everything has to be approved by NCEM. They get it November 1st by way of an email from you. Do they have to respond to us in some 30 days, 60, 90, or?
I'll just ask Mr.
Okay.
Edding Housing if he can answer that question.
Sure, we did not put a time limit in there. Our response would be as timely as possible, realizing that these are survivors, both from the state standpoint, the city and the county, and the quicker we can get them, in most of these cases, buyout, the better.
Because that seems to be the only issue. Everybody's getting along, we're all agreeing on amounts, but then these people, we've already gone, like I said, from Matthew to now Florence. And so I know they don't want to hear, Georgia 2 years from now, or Savannah, whatever the next name is. So.
And we're hoping that these procedures that are 2 years behind, really, just, a couple days shy of 2 years behind for Matthew, now that we finally worked through most of these and they're getting in place for Matthew, it'll be even a quicker response and a carryover because all the policies and procedures are in place for Florence. So that should help speed along Florence response.
Yeah,
So
it's a costly learning curve.
Very costly, sure.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So we're at C, and it's DRA 2017 Memorandum of Agreement.
Is that the recommendation, Tracy?
Yes,
the
sir.
recommendation to
It's to
approve.
approve.
All right, well, I move we approve C as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Unanimous.
All right.
Oh,
Thank
it
you.
wasn't unanimous.
It cannot be. Okay. Voting in favor, Commissioners Faircloth, Keith, Council, Chairman Lancaster, Commissioners Booth. Voting in opposition, Commissioner Adams.
Thank you.
I'm just opposition.
Glenn's having a bad day.
I am having a bad day.
Glenn's having a bad day.
They're much better. All of them are much better than where they started off, I must admit.
All right, County
They
Manager.
are.
Item 4D is consideration of approval of a resolution for designation of an applicant's agent needed to apply for federal and state disaster aid. Mrs. Evans.
I'll vote for this.
Finance Director.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Good morning.
So this is a step in the process of applying for federal and state disaster aid because of Hurricane Florence. It's necessary for the board to approve a resolution designating a primary and secondary applicant agent, just basically for ease in submitting paperwork. Once approved, the designated individuals will be allowed to sign paperwork and file aid applications on behalf of the board. The primary is being designated as Assistant County Manager, Tracy Jackson, and me, the Finance Officer, as the secondary. Requesting your
Commissioner
approval.
Faircloth.
Chairman, I'd like to move for approval.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. Yes, I'm good
All right,
with
Glenn, you need some explanation on this?
No, I'm good on this
He
one.
seconded
I'm
it.
good on this
All those in
one. I
favor?
second it.
Hurry, hurry.
That is unanimous.
Yeah.
Thank
hey,
you.
Thank you.
I'm with that one.
Item 4E is consideration and approval of memorandum of agreement for Hurricane Florence with the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Mr. Brown.
This was a great note.
Jeffrey Brown to the podium. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Board. What we have before you this morning, is a memorandum of an agreement between the NCDOT and Cumberland County. The county had a pre-position contract in for debris monitoring and debris collection prior to Hurricane Florence hitting. After Hurricane Florence impacted our area, and as well as many others of the state, Governor of North Carolina issued Executive Order 62, which basically put the responsibility on collecting debris to NCDOT, both vegetative and construction and demolition debris. Therefore, we could not engage our contractor to get started because we did not have a memorandum of an agreement with NCDOT. So the memorandum of agreement that you have before you this morning is one specifically for Hurricane Florence. It will not go any further than Hurricane Florence. It's not for any future storm, but it's specifically for this storm event. NCDOT obviously is in a position that they need to be focused on their infrastructure and making repairs to infrastructure. And so I think from a county standpoint, to serve our citizens and those that have been impacted by the storm, we are in a better position to make a much more efficient and speedy collection of debris out in the communities with our contractors that we have in place. Therefore, what we're asking the board to do this morning is to approve the attached memorandum of an agreement. And what we did do, and I apologize I didn't make a note of this earlier, we have, part of that memorandum MOA, we are taking all county roads in the unincorporated area of the county with the exception of Interstate 95, Interstate 295, Business 95, and Highway 87. So we're leaving those responsibilities with NCDOT. Figured they would be better served to take on those major roadways, and then we'd focus our efforts on those roadways that serve the communities. At this point in time, I'll answer questions that the board may have.
Well, Mr. Brown, I appreciate the proactive stance on this. And if I missed this, I apologize, but at what level will this memorandum of agreement allow us to be reimbursed by FEMA?
Yes, sir. I apologize. I did not note that. Without this MOA executed with NCDOT, we will not be able to get reimbursement. This MOA allows us to become the federal reimbursement from FEMA for the collection of the storm debris.
And at what level is that? 100%?
The state, federal government right now is 75%. State typically picks up the remaining 25%.
Okay.
Historically, they have.
And when this is approved, or if this is approved, at what level, what's the time frame for this contractor to be able to start?
Today.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Booth.
Just quickly, before we start getting calls on it, when you say 295, 95, 301, 87, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What, 301 is starting where? I mean, are we talking the Crown 301? Are we talking
at Business 95? So basically, you're taking from the intersection of Grove Street back toward 95.
Okay, and same with 87. I mean, 87 comes all the way to a dead end.
Yes, sir.
At Ramsey Street.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And out to Spring Lake.
Make a motion to
Yeah,
approve.
through Spring Lake.
And through Spring Lake doesn't cover that.
I have another question.
Another question.
This is not inside of any municipality, though, is that correct? Or?
That is correct.
Okay, yeah, so it wouldn't be anything in Fayetteville, Oak Mills, or Spring Lake. It would just be outside the municipality.
Did you hear Marshall's comment?
No, I didn't hear
Marshall,
anything Marshall
repeat
said
that,
down there.
repeat that, please.
I asked Jeffrey, and he confirmed that this is strictly outside of the municipalities.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm with that.
The larger municipalities.
Yeah, I read that through the.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. All those in favor?
Unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're down to item number 5, which is nominations. That will be Commissioner Mrs. Dr. Cancel.
I'm for appointments.
Okay.
Right.
Well, you want to?
I'm sorry.
The nursing home board,
But
they
nursing home
recommended
board.
Florence McKeechin.
Okay. That's the one vacancy, Glenn?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
ABC board.
ABC Board,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Dan Griffin.
Dan Griffin. Mr. Booth.
I'd like to nominate Alex Warner.
Okay. Alex Warner. Any other nominations? Animal Control Board, 2 vacancies.
Mr. Chairman, the City of Fayetteville recommends Yvette Sanders for the City of Fayetteville residence position and ex officio April Kelly, the veterinarian on contract. April Kelly.
Any other nominations? We move down to appointments.
That's me.
Gotcha.
Okay. I move to appoint Marva Lucas Moore and Quincentina James to the Board of Adjustment as alternate members, and Austin Campbell, Terry Thomas, Crystal Bennett, and Dominique Ashley to the Cumberland County Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. And I need a second.
Second.
Okay.
Got a second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other appointments? If not, call for your vote.
Unanimous.
Okay, that's unanimous. At this point in time, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you.